better from a recommendation standpoint. I think it's probably easier to make a decision when you don't have to.
Yeah, staring at there. It is, yeah. The heat's not quite as high. You need any lead time, Gary? All right, we're almost there. It's the longest minute. Okay, good. We good to go? Great. We call the January stated meeting to order, and if we would please, let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have the Reverend Anthony Rodriguez of Valley Hope Church with us this evening. Anthony, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Join me in prayer if you'd like. King of heaven and earth, we acknowledge you to be the rightful ruler of every time and place. We recognize that all authority exercised in this world is merely authority delegated from you. You are the source of all wisdom, truth, and beauty. We ask then for your help for these leaders of Black Mountain. We ask that in this time of division, anger, and fear, that they would exercise wise discernment, that our valley might be marked by unity, compassion, and peace. We pray that they might be blessed with ears to hear and eyes to see what they might otherwise be tempted to ignore or overlook. We ask for faithful endurance to continue to execute their duties with integrity and excellence, providing dim reflections of your own kingly authority in their offices. We ask this, that all people might prosper in this town, and so turn to give thanks to you, the giver of all good gifts. Bless then their time together, that all people might be blessed by your goodness, to the praise of your name. We ask this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, who reigns now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Anthony. Be seated, please. Thank you. As far as announcements are concerned, the only announcement that I would offer this evening is maybe just mirror just a bit after Anthony's prayer, after a week of very divisive and concerning events in our country, and that we simply pursue peace as we work with each other and as we try to govern and work and lead the town of Black Mountain and our respective jobs as elected officials. And so with that, we'll just continue to pray for our country, and we'll move forward and on a good foot. So we have some proclamations this evening, and we are going to first have a proclamation for Martin Luther King Day. Then we'll have a proclamation for Deputy Chief John Wilson, who is going to be retiring from our fire department after a distinguished and long career as a volunteer and as an employee of the town. And lastly, a proclamation in honor of Noah Lukowitz for his Eagle Scout project for the town of Black Mountain, and the funds he raised and the efforts he made for that project and on behalf of the town. So first, honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. inspired millions of Americans to participate in nonviolent protest to support the ideals of equality for all, and was a motivating force behind a civil rights movement that had as its goal the creation of a society tolerant of all races, cultures, and nationalities. Whereas the ideals of Dr. King and of Black Mountain's commitment to human rights are worthy of reflection and serve as a reminder that improving the quality of life for all members of our community is the responsibility of every citizen. Whereas the celebration of Dr. King's birthday is intended as a time for all Americans to reaffirm their commitment to the basic principles that underlie our Constitution, equality, and justice for all. Now, therefore, I, Larry B. Harris, Mayor of the town of Black Mountain, as well as that of our citizens, wish to honor and do hereby proclaim Monday, January the 18th, 2021 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the town of Black Mountain, and encourage all citizens to rededicate themselves to the principles of respect for human rights and freedom, of belief in nonviolence, and of commitment to improving our community through community service and volunteerism. The town of Black Mountain will honor Dr. Martin Luther King at the 30th annual Swannanoa Valley Prayer Breakfast, to be held virtually February 6th, 2021. Signed this 11th day of January 2021, Larry B. Harris, Mayor. And I'm going to read just that last paragraph again. It's very appropriate and applicable to what we do want to rededicate ourselves to at this point in time, and very appropriately so on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That we encourage all citizens to rededicate themselves to the principles of respect for human rights and freedom, of belief in nonviolence, and of a commitment to improving our community through community service and volunteerism. Very good. John Wilson. And John, you're welcome to come in. I don't know how we do this. I think you and your wife come on in and get over here where and Chief Harris, come on in too if you'd like to. And just get where you can stand and face the camera there so everybody can see you. I know they love to. Proclamation honoring John Wilson, January 11th, 2021. Whereas it is fitting and proper to honor and pay tribute to John Wilson as he begins a new chapter of his life following his retirement from the Black Mountain Fire Department. Whereas John will retire from the Black Mountain Fire Department on December 31, 2020 after 35 years of volunteer service and 26 years of employment with the town of Black Mountain, and whereas John has rendered valuable services to the town of Black Mountain and the citizens thereof, whereas it is fitting for the town of Black Mountain, whereas it is fitting that the town of Black Mountain shows its appreciation when one has rendered such valuable services, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the town of Black Mountain that John Wilson is hereby acknowledged as having been a good, loyal, and faithful public servant of the town of Black Mountain, that this proclamation expresses the deep appreciation on behalf of the citizens of the town of Black Mountain for the valuable service which he has provided the town, that this proclamation is hereby presented to John Wilson, and a copy of same shall be placed within the records of the town of Black Mountain. Signed this 11th day of January 2021, Larry B. Harris, Mayor. John, congratulations. 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 Thank you so much for your service to the town.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Care to say anything else?
It's just been an honor and a pleasure to work with not only my fellow coworkers and the town employees, but the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And lastly, is Noah here this evening?
No.
Okay. So, proclamation honoring Noah Lukowitz. Whereas the town of Black Mountain takes pride in its sense of community and citizen involvement, whereas the vision of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare every eligible youth in America to become responsible participating citizens and leaders who are guided by the Scout oath and law, and whereas the Boy Scouts of America encourage Eagle Scout candidates to complete worthy projects to improve their neighborhoods, their communities, and their region, and whereas Noah Lukowitz, a junior at Owen High School, is a member of Boy Scout Troop 50, whereas Noah chose Lake Tomahawk as the location to complete his Eagle Scout project, whereas through Noah's hard work, determination, and fundraising, the playground at Lake Tomahawk now has a new handicap accessible service and swing. Now, therefore, I, Larry B. Harris, Mayor of the town of Black Mountain, and the Board of Aldermen express sincere appreciation for his tireless volunteerism, unselfish and dedicated service, and recognize the significant impact his visionary idea will continue to contribute to the Black Mountain community. Signed this 11th day of January 2021, Larry B. Harris, Mayor. We'll give Noah a hand. Okay. Do we have any citizen comments, Josh?
I'll hold them for the second citizen comment period.
Okay, very good. And so we have a communication to us, the Rail Committee project presentation. Alderman Stone, did you care to introduce, or would Josh do you prefer Josh do so?
Sure. Well, it's my privilege to introduce from UNC Asheville, Dr. Dan Pierce, to speak with us tonight about the rail project. Dr. Pierce is a West North Carolina native, where he's authored books on various subjects, from everything from NASCAR to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I look forward to his presentation. Dr. Pierce, if you wouldn't mind coming up here.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I have been at UNCA for 25 years teaching history. Have many fine students, and I also taught Rhinestone.
I don't fall into that category. Thank you.
Now, Ryan's brothers were I don't know why they all took my classes, but they were a pleasure to teach. But I began my teaching career actually at a school that doesn't exist exactly that way. How many years ago? A long time ago, in the late 70s, at Black Mountain Middle School. And so 3.5 years at Black Mountain Middle School. So that was the beginning of my teaching career. And I actually had a guy in class named Teddy Pertiller, and I don't know if he's related to you. But anyway, so, and then 5 years ago, I moved to Ridgecrest. And so I just love being a part of this community. But I wanted to share with you a project that I've been working on for about 6 months or so. And first, just kind of a question: why was Black Mountain created, or what created Black Mountain? 1893. So I'll play teacher here. Does anyone want to stab at that?
I'm going to venture to say it was the railroad.
Yeah. Yes, good guess. Yeah, it was the railroad. It was the coming of the railroad, which topped the ridge in 1879 at Swannanoa Gap. And that construction project that lasted about 3.5 years, John Ager and I were recently talking about this, and he said he believes it's the most important infrastructure project in the history of Western North Carolina. And I would be inclined to agree. I don't think anything remotely tops it in terms of the impact that it had on this area and the obvious impact it had on Black Mountain. That, if you know much about the construction between Old Fort and the Swannanoa Gap, people from around the world still come to marvel at that feat of construction. 7 tunnels, countless switchbacks. I mean, it's just an amazing feat of engineering, particularly for the times when it was built. People involved in that and people not involved in that, but people who think were involved with it, have been honored. James Wilson has a memorial in Old Fort, and of course, Colonel Andrews has Andrews Geyser, although Andrews was not directly involved in that part of the construction of the railroad. He was with the rest of the railroad. But there is no memorial. There is no recognition, public recognition really, of the over 3,000 incarcerated laborers who built that railroad. If you know much about it, almost 90% plus of these were African Americans. Many of them were former slaves. And we use the word in our project, we try to avoid the term convict. And we use the word incarcerated, and there's an important reason for that. And that, if you can see the screen here, you can see why we use the term incarcerated and not convict, because of how so many of these individuals came to work on that railroad. So it says on the line of the Western North Carolina Railroad towards Asheville from the tunnel, 3 stockades are to be built for convicts, 700 are to be sent immediately. And this is the chilling part. The supply of convicts at the penitentiary is not sufficient, and word will be sent out to the prosecuting officers to bring before the courts a larger number of offenders. So essentially, this is an invitation for prosecutors. We can talk about legal language here, to go and round people up. And that's what happened. Many of these people were arrested for minor offenses, which they may or may not have committed, and generally even for very minor offenses, sentenced to 3 years at hard labor. And so, again, over 3,000 during that period of construction, over 3,000 incarcerated individuals from the state penitentiary were brought to work on that section. They worked under horrible conditions. They were ill-clothed, ill-fed, and ill-housed. The work itself, they worked 6 days a week. The work itself was extremely dangerous, with constant threat of rock and mudslides, cave-ins in the tunnels, which happened frequently, and a work environment characterized by swinging axes, sledgehammers, and the use of gunpowder, and most notably, one of the first uses of nitroglycerin in American history. Many of these workers suffered from the consequences of both illness because of their housing and feeding conditions, and the lack of health care, and the fact that they're in thin uniforms, out working in all kinds of weather. They suffered from the consequences of illness and injury the rest of their lives. At least 139 died from a variety of reasons, from illness, from cave-ins, from any number of things. In fact, that stretch of railroad, you have to think of it this way: from Ridgecrest to Old Fort is essentially a mass graveyard. And again, we know from the penitentiary records that at least 139, probably many more, died in the process. Back in July, strangely, I had thought about this for a long time. Since we moved to Ridgecrest, I spent a lot of time going down the Point Lookout Greenway and up on Kitsuma and all around that area. And I read, years ago, John Ely's The Road, which I recommend highly. Wilma Dykeman's The French Broad, which has a chapter on the construction of the railroad. And I had an incredibly talented student did his senior thesis on this construction project. And so I knew about this, and so I'm around that railroad a lot. And I don't go down there or near the railroad without thinking about the price that was paid to build that railroad up the mountain. In July, I contacted an old friend of mine from my days working at Camp Ridgecrest for Boys by the name of Steve Little. Some of you may know Steve. He's an attorney in Marion and is the mayor of Marion. And he was unable to be with us tonight, but we got together socially distanced on my porch over breakfast and sat for 3 hours on July 7th. And we put together a committee. It was an amazing thing. We asked 9 other people to join us on the committee from McDowell and Buncombe County, and tried to have a mix of individuals. We actually, interestingly, have 2 African-American chiefs of police. Melvin Lytle from Old Fort, and Eric Boyce, who is from McDowell County, who's chief of police at UNC Asheville. And so we put together that committee. It was one of those rare occasions where everybody we asked immediately agreed to be a part of this. And so we've been working together since then on this project. Our main goal of the project is to build a memorial to these incarcerated workers. Again, we came up with the name RAIL for our group, Railroad Incarcerated Laborers Memorial. So a little awkward, but it's a cool thing there. So we, the first thing we did, and Chief Lytle shocked us very early on. He said, "Can you come to a Board of Aldermen meeting and make a proposal?" Because we wanted to put the memorial at Andrews Geyser, which is Old Fort city property. So on August 11th, we went to the Alderman meeting. We got a unanimous approval from the Board of Aldermen to allow us to build a memorial. So since that time, we have been working on publicizing the project. We have a website that one of our committee members did, Ashley McGee, which is excellent, has a lot of information. I'd recommend that you look at that. It's therailproject.org. We've been fortunate to get significant publicity along the way from newspapers and television, and even Steve did a piece for Spectrum News, which I think goes out all over. But anyway, so we've been raising money for this project, and so now we're in a phase to kind of increase awareness and also to help us in soliciting some larger entities. John Ager is going to help us with approaching the legislature. Before we go there, we would like to have endorsements or a proclamation, or however you do that, of support from the town of Black Mountain. And so that's why I'm here tonight to request such a proclamation of support, and hopefully you will help spread the word in your networks about what we're doing. One of the, as many of you know, once you get involved in something like this, it can snowball, and that's what's happened with this. So now we have added things. So there will be a memorial at Andrews Geyser. We'll also put up an informational wayside marker there. We're also going to seek permission from Buncombe County to put a wayside marker at Swannanoa Gap. There is that state marker, and I was on that committee at one time, but it doesn't give you much, and it has like one little sentence. And so we want to do one there to talk about the Swannanoa Tunnel and the incarcerated laborers, several who died in a cave-in in that tunnel. And then beyond that, it kind of hit me that it would be appropriate, perhaps, to put a wayside marker at the depot in Black Mountain. So I may be coming back to you for permission on that. But those are our plans. Another thing we're trying to do is, which is very challenging, are to identify some specific burial places. And we have some, there's a lot of lore in this area, and some of you may have heard things, that there are spots where individuals were buried from that period. And that's going to be a challenge, but we're going to try to do that so those can be marked and as part of the memorial. Some of you may have also read that John Ager has proposed, he had an editorial in the Asheville Citizen yesterday, to repurpose Vance Monument and dedicate it to the memory of the railroad workers. So anyway, again, thank you for your time, and I don't know if we have time for any questions, or if you have any questions.
Any questions?
If an individual wanted to make a donation to this, can they go to your website?
You can, and there's a big all-cap donate button. And we would love to have that. So we've it's been fairly low key, but we are more than halfway to our goal right now. So people have been very generous. But yes.
What does Representative Ager think that the state can contribute to? What's your total budget, and what does John think?
That's another thing that keeps growing. Right now, we're thinking $20,000. So we're at about 12,000 now, and basically what we will go to the state for is whatever we need at that time.
You know, I don't know the funding cycle, but have you approached the Black Mountain Swannanoa Endowment Fund?
No,
And I think their funding cycle starts at the first of the year, calendar year. I'm not positive about that, but I would encourage you to do that. I think that might be fruitful. But any other questions?
what was that, Swannanoa Black
Black,
Mountain?
Black Mountain Swannanoa Endowment Fund.
And,
I think if you just Googled it, it would
Okay.
come up. If the monies are held at the Community Foundation of Western North
Okay.
Carolina, but it's it's an endowment for this area. So I know they'd appreciate hearing from you, and I'd recommend you might reach out to them. If there are no other questions, I'd entertain a motion to support the project if the board thinks that would work.
So moved.
Very good. Any discussion? If not, we in these public meetings, now that we're doing them in this different fashion, we have to do a roll call, which probably happened in Marion or there at Old Fort, I bet. But Alderman Stone, if you'd start.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Portillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
All right, thank you. Well, it's unanimous, and we appreciate your work. It's a great project, and we'll look forward to going to down to Andrews Geyser
thank you so much.
for the
Yeah,
dedication
we're
ceremony.
hoping, maybe late summer that we'll have a dedication.
Right. Maybe we'll have vaccines by then.
Well, we got great plans because we got some great musicians and stuff already
That'll be
lined up.
fun. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce.
Thank you.
Consent agenda. Josh, can you take us through that?
Sure. All right. Item 5A of the consent agenda is adoption of minutes. This would be the December 14th, 2020 regular session meeting minutes and the December 29th, 2020 special call meeting minutes. Item B is a budget amount in the amount of $15,000. This would be, budget number 2021-10. This $15,000 is for a new generator over at our fire substation, Fire Station 2, over at the community garden. The existing generator, we had no way of knowing that it was insufficient until we lost some power a couple of months ago, and that generator is quite a bit dated and is unable to run really anything we need over there if we lose power. So it's important we get a generator in there that can provide us the service we need. And then item 5C is a resolution to award Deputy Chief John Wilson his fireman's helmet. And that'll be it for your consent agenda.
And badge.
And badge, yes, excuse me.
Very good. Consent agenda is in front of you. I'd entertain a motion for its approval.
So moved.
Any questions for Josh? If not, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Portillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Josh, citizen comments at this point in time?
All right, yes, I'm gonna read some citizen comments that have to do with new business, and I'll hold all the other ones for the public hearings. All right, I'll try to be quick with these. This is from Sue Steigelman, 6 East Kessler Avenue, Black Mountain. As a resident of Black Mountain, I'm writing to urge the Board of Aldermen to continue to follow the stricter COVID-19 guidelines. I work with COVID-19 information every day. The approval of vaccines is remarkable, but logistically it will take months to get those distributed and into people's arms. Dr. Hathaway of Mission Hospital said at a recent Buncombe County Commissioners meeting, we are deep in the surge right now and it's going to get worse. We are barely into the results of the cases, hospitalizations, and deaths that will be the results of the winter holiday gatherings and travel. Easing up on restrictions now will just increase that spread, increase the number of people who will get sick, increase the pressure on our hospitals and healthcare workers, and increase the number of dead and the family and friends who will mourn them. David Howarth. Dear Board of Aldermen, I wish to express my support and appreciation for your recent decisions regarding the adoption of safety protocols for Black Mountain. Please continue to do whatever you can to maintain the health and safety of our residents and visitors during this current crisis. Martha Johnson. Dear board members, I'm writing to weigh in on your vote on the county's COVID restrictions. Thank you for your recent vote to follow Buncombe County regulations. I understand that our business owners may wish for you to weaken these restrictions, but with their cases rising at a frighteningly exponential rate and a more contagious strain spreading, I feel that it's of utmost importance to maintain the restrictions. Thank you for all you do. Teresa Slaughter. Dear Board of Aldermen, Mayor Harris, I watched the agenda meeting last night and heard there will be a further discussion of the COVID plan for Black Mountain at the next regular meeting. I appreciate and fully support the Board of Aldermen adopting the county's more stringent guidelines and hope they will continue to do so. I also support promoting a plan to encourage residents to utilize takeout from our local restaurants to help them survive the hardship that has been thrust on them through no fault of their own. Hopefully, the town government and Chamber of Commerce can work together to quickly put together a plan to help our local restaurants. Thank you for your work to help us get through this pandemic. And this is from the Black Mountain Chamber of Commerce. As the executive director of the Black Mountain Swannanoa Chamber of Commerce, I would urge the Board of Aldermen to reconsider their stance on the COVID restaurant order, reducing the capacity to 30% based on the following. Number one, the CDC has guidelines to minimize exposure within a restaurant setting. The Buncombe County and North Carolina State Health Departments encourage these guidelines, and my interaction with Black Mountain Eateries indicates these are strictly adhered to or at a higher level. Number two, Black Mountain retail and dining diminished dramatically in January, even in normal years. Frustrating and adding additional restrictions to the challenges of restaurant survival is adding fuel to their stresses by this order. It's like closing the barn door after the horses gotten out. Many of restaurants and retail closed for a couple of weeks in January to recover from the holiday season. Ordering reduced capacity may not impact their revenue, but it does add stress to their decision making. Number three, the fact that Black Mountain has no health department in making these decisions is confusing. Buncombe County Health Department oversees the entire county and is not limited in jurisdiction to Asheville. I'm unsure as to how this is a factor in the decision process. Number four, Black Mountain businesses cannot survive solely on local business. The town needs transient customers to meet financial obligations. Number five, the majority of COVID-19 in zip code 28711 infections are in congregate living communities. Gibbons Highland Farms, Veterans Home, and Black Mountain Center. 100 of 533 infections in the 28711 zip were in these three facilities of 9,890 countywide cases. Black Mountain has reported 533 cases, 5% of total county reported infections, when Black Mountain has 3% of the county population. Yet the majority of these cases are in congregate living facilities. 11 of 24 deaths in the 28711 zip code were in these facilities, 46% of local deaths. Our restaurants are not the problem in Black Mountain community spread. Number six, I would strongly urge getting feedback from the restaurant segment or any other business being impacted by the pandemic and using them as the gauge to make decisions that are more stringent than state mandates. The business owners would appreciate being part of the decision process that impacts their livelihood. The Chamber will be happy to work closely with the Board of Aldermen and the town manager to collect business feedback. Number seven, the Chamber is working with two aldermen, Pam King and Doug Hay, in developing a promotion to support our restaurants. We hope to have a draft proposal soon. This is from Erica Burns. Dear Town of Black Mountain Board members, I don't think I've ever sent you a comment, but I've been waiting to do this since the last alderman meeting, which I watched on YouTube. I just wanted to give you my 2 cents as a Black Mountain resident that I was very relieved to hear you all vote on following the county's regulations on COVID. As an older person, I've been isolating since March, and I look forward to the day when I can get to the vaccine and resume some sort of normalcy. In the meantime, as I watch the COVID numbers rising exponentially in our state, as a new, more contagious strain invades the U.S., and as there is a slow roll on the vaccine, I totally support Black Mountain following the county's regulations. I realize that this is extremely difficult for local businesses, especially for our wonderful restaurants. So I fully support the idea of doing as much takeout as possible from all of our great places. I'm wondering if there is any money available in the town budget to help support these businesses as well. I understand the objections to these limitations and appreciate the great fear that businesses and their employees have as they are pushed to their limits. But if their clientele is killed or even lost their sense of taste as a result of the virus, they will not do well in the future either. Thank you for working to protect us all. This is Courtney Holcomb and James Full. Let's see. With all due respect, we are concerned about the decision process to follow recent Buncombe County guidelines. We are making a request to justify the validated statistical data that decisions the decisions made at the special call meeting on December 29, 2020 to change the capacity percentage for dining in and the size of groups. Prove the validity by comparing in Black Mountain statistically valid data proving an upward trend of hospitalizations and deaths in Black Mountain caused only by COVID-19, and explain how changing current guidelines for distancing and gathering size only has a very probable result of eliminating further hospitalizations and death. Second, clearly explain how each dining inside area in Black Mountain has its normal maximum capacity defined such that 50% or 30% can be calculated and was fairly applied to all establishments. And third, how will this regulation be enforced by inspection for conformance since it is not a legally enacted law? Let's see. Not 100% sure the data has been properly vetted. Reports surface about percentage of false positives, negatives, miscounting. Those are not taken into account relative to positive tests versus symptoms. Hospitalizations are a major concern regarding human suffering and hospital capacity for proper care. And most importantly, the mortality rates as a percentage of population. This determines risk. For the sake of argument, I will agree they are reasonably accurate and subject to validation and interpretation, but not parsed for Black Mountain. Of the 5 people I know in Black Mountain, 3 in the service industry who tested positive, 2 had no symptoms, 3 had mild symptoms, no medication or hospitalization, just quarantine. Spread rate by aerosol from infected individuals or direct contact, including surfaces, is still based on assumptions. The data is improving over time. Spread rate has not been evaluated by calculating the impact of noncompliance with masking, improper or ineffective mask use, or materials and lack of distancing, proper quarantine, and disinfecting. Constant, partial, inconsistent surface bleaching produces resistant strains of bacteria and viruses which grow and spread. Capacity of dining areas is arbitrarily defined by number of toilets and not always square footage / emergency exits meeting fire code. A restaurant owner conveyed this info to me. A 6-foot distance measure is a guess and a compromise. Contact tracing not working well, so we do not know how many maskless individuals can cause spread. Lack of distancing at many ranges. Wearing ineffective masking materials contributes, or if constant disinfection does anything other than encourage resistance to develop in virus strains as they reproduce. It appears the guidelines have not been followed 100% of the time by our population. Both short-term and long-term economic damage must be considered and weighed against risk. Generally, the most vulnerable segments of society, service industry, small business owners, minorities, school-aged children, elderly, and those with pre-existing conditions are affected the most. Debt finance stimulus is not a long-term viable solution. My conclusion is we do not have sufficient statistically valid data to rank the effectiveness of the draconian measures taken and justification for Black Mountain to follow Buncombe County, and the lack of contrasting the data which is published versus measures taken versus results is a matter of concern. The media and politicians continue to act as social media influencers, injecting opinions and bias into what should be fact-based news. They use their learned skills of, I can't even pronounce that word, and assume gravitas. David Muir, ABC anchor, is a classic example, including his orchestrated body language and hand motions. Watch and listen closely. Of course, I expect the governance of Black Mountain to adhere to all federal, state, and county laws. When it pertains to guidelines, recommendations, proclamations, executive orders, etc., I expect the mayor and board of aldermen to evaluate these, not enact into law, and act on facts in the best overall interest, short and long term, of the Black Mountain electorate. Pardon me. This is Carl Mims. The new edict against restaurants that is more restrictive than even the governor's orders is not based on any science. It's just a feel like you did something order. Yeah, you did something. You put restaurant owners and their employees out of business for no good reason. Lockdowns don't work. Just look at California versus Florida. Shame on you all. Pam Mims, dear Black Mountain Board of Aldermen members, I am writing in regards to the recent decision by the board to go above and beyond the North Carolina COVID restrictions for restaurant capacity. I do not understand the logic for making this decision. As we have seen throughout the U.S., California as a case in point, these restrictions do not appear to be slowing the spread of coronavirus. I feel like it was something you did to make the townspeople think you were actually doing something to help the problem. However, one of the beauties of Black Mountain is its wonderful restaurants. Unfortunately, after speaking with some of the staff at these restaurants, they do not think they will be able to survive with 30% capacity. I believe everyone these days knows the inherent risk of being around other people, and we all must take it upon ourselves to act responsibly and not spread the virus. By closing restaurants, you are hurting Black Mountain. please reconsider your decision. And lastly, this is Susan Kimmett. I am reaching out to the town of Black Mountain, its mayor, and other elected officials to express my shocking concern for the new restrictions on our local retail businesses, in particular, restaurants. We are residents of this great town, and my husband and I are visiting our local restaurants in Black Mountain and some in Asheville as well on a regular basis and have been all year in 2019 to the present. They all seem to be following CDC guidelines and local mandates, orders as far as social distancing, masks, etc., and we feel perfectly safe and, of course, have not contracted the virus from any of them. They are operating safely and at 50% capacity in the past, and there is no data showing or proving that a large or extreme number of COVID cases are contracted at restaurants. I see now they are reduced to 30% capacity, and some are stating they will have to close due to this. This is ridiculous and insane that they are targeted as high risk when there is no data supporting that, but we can still go to Lowe's, grocery stores, Walmarts, etc., that often have way more people in them at a time and less social distancing. This is America, and we are a free country, and we are forcing many of these businesses to close when there is no proven link to extreme spread in restaurants. They were following the guidelines and operating safely, so why are we the people and our leaders pushing this and or allowing this? We are taking away from these business owners and their employees the right to make a living. Many will go under being restricted to this level, and this is unacceptable. I would like our mayor and other elected officials to consider pushing back on this and help these local businesses, their owners and employees. We have to find a balance between protecting people and reducing spread while still allowing our retail, restaurants, and other businesses to survive. Our economy and people's ability to make a living and support themselves and their families do matter also. Bailouts are not enough. And that is it for citizen comments right now.
Thank you, Josh. So our next agenda item is unfinished business and our appointment to the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium. And we wanted to revisit this because I believe Alderman Patilla was happy to serve as the primary. And so, of course, Jessica Trotman, our planning director, is happy to serve as alternate. And so that is the consideration before the board. Of course, the board can do exactly what you'd like to do with that, but that's why it's on the agenda. So I'll open that up for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that Archie Portiller be appointed to serve on the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium
As primary.
as the primary.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? And then I think we could just do it in one motion.
Sure.
Is it okay to do, to add to
Absolutely,
Jessica?
and Jennifer Trotter would be the alternate.
Jessica Trotman.
Trotman, I'm sorry.
Very good. So with that, is there any discussion on that? That's to make Alderman Patilla the primary and Jessica the alternate. Any questions? If not, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your willingness to serve.
Thank you, Pat.
And so the next is our appointment to the Metropolitan Sewer District, and it's on the agenda because we were not certain of Bob Watts, who is currently serving, if he was eligible under the rules that we have adopted. I don't know that that's a formal rule or it's just a practice that we have, but he is, if the rule that the board wishes to follow is that someone can serve 2 consecutive terms. He has not served 2 consecutive. He has served a term ago, 2 consecutive terms, but then he took a break, which that's what we're looking for. And then he's back on. So Mr. Watts is eligible under the rules. These are they're your rules. It's like I was playing with my grandson at Christmas, and he was some made-up game, and he said, you can cheat because I make up the rules on this. Do what you want to do. So that's why it's on the agenda. We do need to appoint somebody, and we don't do an alternate here. If Bob for some reason couldn't serve, we would just have to appoint somebody at another meeting.
Mr. Mayor, this is Tim Raines. I'd like to nominate Bob Watts for primary for that.
Very good, thank you. Is there any discussion on that? If not, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Very good, thank you, and our appreciation to Bob for his service at MSD. And now we're to new business, and Josh, the town of Black Mountain COLA, cost of
Yes.
living adjustment increase.
Sure. So for those of you that were here when we put together this last budget, typically we go into the budget and we look at around 2.5 or 3% usually is where we start for COLAs, at least from the staff level before it gets to you. And I think unfortunately with everybody, probably across the country, that had to kind of be trimmed back because we weren't sure how our sales tax revenues are going to come in and some other revenues. Well, I want to report to you today that our sales tax is looking really good. I think the time I wrote this cover sheet, I put $71,000 to the good. Well, as of today, we are about $102,000 above what we budgeted for sales tax. So that's great news.
And Josh, do you know off the top of your head what it was last year?
The cost of living,
No, the sales tax revenue at this point in time,
I don't.
because that's actually maybe the more germane number, but I think you had told us one time it was up from the prior year.
It
Just,
is,
I don't know what
that's
the
correct.
number is, yeah.
That's correct. I think it was up, if I remember correctly, Mayor Harris, around 4% maybe from the current year, last time we had that discussion. So I think, our employees, really all of our employees have kind of been essential. I think as a town, we have to be able to provide water to folks, garbage service, streets, police, fire. I mean, I think the whole gamut of services that we provide, we haven't slowed down, and I think we've done a great job during this pandemic. And what I did was look at some other jurisdictions in the county and kind of what they did this year for COVID and for raises. Woodfin, town of Woodfin did a COLA of 3%. Biltmore Forest did a COLA of 2%. And Weaverville did a COLA of 1.5%, but they also did a merit of up to 3%. So I think, we're pretty close in line with those. I didn't include Asheville because they're kind of outliers just because there's so many people try to use the towns that are a little smaller like us. But essentially what I'm asking for is we budgeted for 1% COLA to start in January of this budget year. And so we're asking for a 3% instead of 1%, which is going to be $55,100 is going to be the difference in that cost from 1% to 3%.
And then with that, Josh, that you'll build the budget, should the board adopt the 3% COLA increase, your budget for 21-22 would incorporate that.
That is correct.
This is 6 months worth, but your forthcoming budget incorporates that.
Correct.
Any questions for Josh?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve the COLA increase as presented by the town manager.
Very good, thank you. Any discussion on that? Questions? If not, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. And I think I speak for all of us in the room. We do appreciate the work that the employees have done. And we always do, but in particular during this, during the 2020, just an unusual year to just about be doing anything. But working for, doing public work for a municipality is it's challenging, I'm sure. And we very much appreciate our employees,
Mr. Mayor.
including those in the room.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, this is Tim Raines. I just want to also say thank you for the Public Works Department and the job they did during this last snowstorm. They had crews out all night long working to keep our streets clear. And so I just want to express my appreciation for them.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you. Our next item is the budget amendment. So that we can get this COLA increase into our budget, it requires an amendment. So I'd entertain a motion to that extent.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Great,
as
thank you.
presented.
Thank you so much. Any questions on that? If we don't do this, they're not gonna get their 3%, so, you know. All right, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Josh, the Buncombe County Dispatch Consolidation, if you'd
All right.
tell us about that. and
Sure.
Tell us what you need
Yeah,
the board to consider.
So in your packet, you have a draft agreement, and, you know, the dates obviously are gonna change in that agreement. And I also, Ron, I don't think you weren't here, but I did give this,
You gave it
give it
to
to
him,
everybody
yeah.
again today. So, so in the agreement, let me just kind of start out on, just tell you a little bit of backstory on this. I guess it was back before, COVID ever started. The chief and I were discussing a few things about the potential for him to get some more, patrolmen in the department. And so we're looking at some ways to make that happen. And I think what we looked at was the potential for, essentially, you know, using the dispatch. If we didn't have dispatch, could we use that excess money that we're not paying for dispatch to hire officers, patrol officers? So we started into this probably back in November of 19 with the county, had some good discussions. And, you know, I think when we went in, we wanted to look at being, or some equal treatment with Woodfin and Weaverville. They were both getting county dispatch at no cost. So we wanted to see if we could get it at no cost. So since that time, COVID, of course, happened. This kind of got put on the back burner until a couple months ago, and the county picked it back up. And so we've been in those conversations for a couple of months now. The county is looking to do more of a consolidated dispatch for everybody in the county at some point in the future. I think with us in Montreat, since we're kind of already, at least from a staff perspective, ready to make that move in the near future, whereas Weaverville and Woodfin and Asheville aren't there yet. But as you see on this page, there has been some figures and some calculations that are out there for Woodfin and Weaverville. Montreat currently pay the town of Black Mountain to dispatch, and now they of course would be paying Buncombe County to dispatch if this agreement is passed. The total amount for Buncombe County to provide this service for the town of Black Mountain, there's 3 options on here. I was hoping I got to pick the cheapest option, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. The county had picked the middle of the road option, feeling like it was more equitable for everybody. The total amount for us would be $161,731.08 per year. Currently, we spend about $240,000 to provide this service with our in-house employees. We have been operating dispatch. Typically, we have 4 employees. We have been operating it with 3 employees for the past few months because I knew this was looming and coming, and I didn't want to hire somebody and then have to figure out what we were going to do after we made this switch, if we made it. I will say one person that we have working here now will be retiring in the next month. One person is going to stay on as more of a, I guess, senior admin assistant, if you will, someone that would be at the front desk of the police station, answer phone calls and direct people that may come in, things of that nature, and do some other things. The third person would become an employee of Buncombe County, and that's written out in the intergovernmental agreement that you have in your packet. So from the board tonight, I need, I guess, a feeling of whether you would like to pursue this and go with the county for 911 consolidation, or is this something we want to keep in-house? Like I mentioned, the language is a little bit off right now, and we'll have to make some corrections to some dates. But if the board ends up wanting to do this, I would just say you give me the ability to make changes to those dates, and we get moving when we can get the T's crossed and the I's dotted.
Ron, any concerns for you, as far as you're concerned with the agreement as it's written now?
The agreement as written is fine. As I brought up the agenda meeting, you might, and I think it's kind of insignificant right now in our age of low inflation, but the annual increase is an increase of cost of living increase based on whatever it calculated out to be the prior year instead of the base year. Right now, and in the foreseeable future, that's not going to make a big difference. if we had a run of inflation that would make significant difference over a series of years. However, I think the contract, since you can you can terminate at any time. Should that happen, you can go back and renegotiate. So that, I don't think that's a big issue.
Okay, very good. So, let me ask first, board, any questions, whatever, for Josh or Ron?
Josh, could you speak to the quality of service? Would it change in any way?
So, I mean, I think we have a great quality of service now. I don't want to discredit that at all, because I think it is a great quality of service. I do think, you know, as this moves forward with the county and everything being housed with the county, I do think that it's going to provide a better service. I think if you've got, you know, if the county is handling everyone's dispatch, to me, that's going to make it just easier to do that way, versus everybody having individual different dispatch teams. So yes, I do think the quality of service is going to be at least as good, if not better. And I think if Chief Freeman was in here, he would echo that statement.
Anyone else?
Well, the experience as a citizen calling 911, would it be any different?
No, it would not be any different. You know, when you call over there, you know, we have an off, like an after hours number that you would call, and essentially how that'll work. Once that person leaves for the day, the person that's going to be up front, those calls will automatically transfer to 911, and then they dispatch it out. So if it's a water leak, then that gets, that doesn't, obviously that's not an emergency call, but we would still get notified of that. Or a tree down on the roadway, something along those lines. But yes, that should not change. Someone called 911, it's going to go straight.
Right now, if you call the dispatch, they may need to turn and call 911 at sometimes, right? I don't know if they do it all the time, but sometimes.
Non-emergency number they can
Right.
call.
Right. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor, I would just really commend Josh and staff for staying on top of this project. I do think it'll bring a better and higher quality service to the town and help with interagency communication. But also, I think one of the pushbacks from us, you know, for the years that we've kind of talked about this is, what do we do with these folks that have been invested so long with the town as in our dispatch as is? And I really want to commend you, Josh, for working with the county to make sure that these people have either a place here or there, because especially in these times, it's very important to look out for them. So just want to give you a lot of credit for that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? The only thing I'm disappointed with, Josh, you didn't get to negotiate that zero cost
Yeah.
deal.
I will say I've been told by the county reps, once they get in and start doing it, that cost is likely to decrease.
Right. No, thank you. It's good work. So I think, help me if I'm misstating this, but I think if we entertained a motion to approve the agreement, what's the title of this? The intergovernmental agreement between Buncombe County and the town of Black Mountain, and authorize the town manager and town attorney to make, we'd call them minor immaterial changes, which I guess dates might fit into that. A motion along those lines, I think would probably work and get the agreement out there where it can be furthered.
I'll move what you just said.
Very good. That'll work. Is that good? Good, Savannah? Great, thank you. So the motion is to approve the intergovernmental agreement between Buncombe County and Town of Black Mountain, and authorize the town manager and town attorney to make final and immaterial changes, dates, et cetera, to get the agreement where it needs to be. And if there are no questions or comments, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Okay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. This is a good thing, I think, for us, and thankful that these employees, as Alderman Stone says, have a place. So we are at the Buncombe County emergency order that we just needed to take a look at because it expired last Friday. So I'll open this up to the board for discussion.
Well, and Josh, if you can help me with this, has the county set a date for its hearing to review this as of yet?
As far as and I hope I don't tell you wrong again like I
Okay.
did last time. So last time I've looked at that, it is pretty much until repealed, rescinded, or changed. It's
Okay.
kind of open-ended at this point.
I believe the last time we talked about this, our Alderman Fertiller had mentioned school districts.
They're still working with the 19th as far as going back 2 days a week. Yes.
And the reasoning for that was,
They had planned, and if I'm not mistaken, you can let me know, Alderman Raines, that they wanted to wait until after the holidays for a couple of weeks to see how things were going and to see if there was an increase or an uptick in transmissions. And so far, they haven't seen that, I guess, in this area. So they are going to be going back, I know, in the Owen district and probably the county districts, to 2 days a week.
Yeah, and when the kids come back to school, they have the option of being remote only,
Yes,
or if they come in, they're gonna be on an A and B schedule. And so they'll actually only be on campus 2 days a week.
yes. You have cohort A and cohort B. And A goes Monday and Tuesday, and B goes Wednesday and Thursday, and then everybody's home on Friday.
Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday,
B goes
everybody's
Thursday,
home on Wednesday.
Friday's home on Wednesday.
That's right.
so it's your impression that the numbers have not increased? and
That
that's-
my daughter attends, and I'm just as careful, if not more than anybody, but I feel like she's safe there. So, yeah, that's just my,
And I can say from personal experience that, you know, when we saw early on in the pandemic, when kids were going back to school in Georgia, and we saw that terrible scene of all those kids in the hallway together, we've had none of that. You know, they stagger the class changes, they stagger the lunches, and there's never, you know, there's probably never more than 150, 200 kids in the building at any one time. So they've taken a lot of necessary precautions to, you know, I can speak for Owen, and I'm assuming it's the same way the rest of Buncombe County.
I know that, I think like many of the people who wrote in citizen comments, I'm incredibly concerned about the, you know, what seems to be, you know, the surge that we're experiencing here locally. You know, that said, I also fully appreciate the feedback we've gotten from the Chamber of Commerce and the restaurant owners and workers, and their concern about what it will mean for them and the kind of wishy-washiness of going back and forth on orders like this. You know, one thing that I do think we should discuss is that, from my understanding, Black Mountain is, the occupancy is set differently, is determined differently than other parts of the county. And, you know, and that if we're going to follow the county's guidance or the county's lead around occupancy, you know, is it appropriate for Black Mountain to do that when our occupancy is determined differently?
You know, as a reminder, Biltmore Forest, Woodfin, and Weaverville, the other municipalities other than Asheville are not following the county's order. Following the governor's order, but not the county's.
Well, I said last time it was the horns of a dilemma, and that hasn't changed a bit in my head. It's a frustration because I know every single person in this community and elsewhere wants this pandemic over. You know, everybody wants that, and it's just a question of which numbers are you looking at, and what's the best approach. It's a little frustrating to me because I feel like there's a whole bunch of people following the guidelines and doing everything they can to keep everybody safe, and then there's some other people that don't seem to feel like it's necessary to follow the guidelines. And so it's real hard to tell which is making an impact and which isn't when there's some parts of the community that are just not following any guidelines. So for me to say the restaurants have to follow greater restrictions when the entire community's not helping is a real frustration to me. I'd love to hear from some other aldermen what they think.
I had an opportunity. I like you. I eat out a lot, and I observe a lot too. And I've noticed that, and I've lived here like all my life, so I know that in the winter time here, occupancy is not an issue basically during January and February. I'm like you, it's really difficult whenever you see some people doing everything they can to do what's right. And then you see others who, I don't want to say that, but for better or lack of words, act like they really just don't care. And it's difficult to kind of do that. And I don't want to feel like that we are punishing the restaurants for others' behavior. And that's what I've come to here in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I felt like when we went to this, that giving it a couple of weeks for maybe the spike to slow down a little bit. I was kind of hesitant about that in the beginning, but I think, like Archie said, to single out the restaurant industry in Black Mountain, I don't feel like that's right for us to do that. It's not just the restaurant owners, it's their employees. They have to cut back on employees sometimes, and then, trying to rehire them if the restrictions are, increased or decreased or lifted altogether. So I just think that, like Archie said, also the 50, if we go back to 50% capacity in January and February, that we're not talking about a whole lot of more people that are frequenting the restaurants. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Anyone else?
I would just say for me personally, looking at the data on the DHHS website, you look at all of Western North Carolina and everyone is in the critical stage, except for 2 counties. I think that shows the graveness of this situation. I like everyone here, I don't like singling out the restaurant industry. I'm not placing blame on them. I'm not saying that spread causes from them. But the unique nature of that industry, the unique nature of our anatomy that requires us to remove this mask, to drink and eat, creates risk. It creates risk. It creates risk not just to the business itself, but to the individuals. We know that COVID, even with the mortality rate, can cause long-term issues in people, heart damage, lung damage, neuro damage. In this time, I just feel that the tougher the 30% restriction is more appropriate until we come out of this surge from New Year's, which would be the end of this week. correct? 14 days from the first. Yeah, would be roughly the 15th. I know it's my understanding the county does have a COVID meeting tomorrow to go over. I don't know if they're going to discuss this topic or not. But I would like to see some improvement in the numbers before I'm willing to vote to relax any type of restriction.
It doesn't have to be painful for the restaurants at 30%. If, and this is done in other communities, if let's say half the households in Black Mountain ordered takeout once a week, it would offset the losses from in-restaurant dining. Kind of like let's help our community restaurants.
Absolutely, Pam. I mean, I can speak for our house. I know that's something that we're trying to do.
I think everybody's spoken. Do you want to make a motion to reverse your decision of, from our special call meeting? Or if not, you don't have to take any action, I think would be work, wouldn't it, Mr. Sneed?
I think if you take, I think the way your last one read, the minutes in front of me. So if you take no action, we'll go back to the state
That's right.
and follow the county.
It had a time on it, didn't it? Yep, had a date on it. So you need to take an affirmative action to go to 30%. Otherwise we'll drop back to
50%.
50%. So if you take no action, do I have this right, Ron? No action, 50%, you need to make a motion to drop it to 30%.
That's correct.
If I hear no motion, I'm gathering the board is telling us to go back to 50%.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just for my own sake, I would make a motion to continue the county ordinance to give one more week of data and give it until next Friday, the 22nd.
Okay, there's the motion. Everybody understand that? Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, no.
Tim Raines, no.
Okay, no.
Pam King, aye.
Motion passes 3-2.
I think it failed.
It failed. Yes, sorry, the motion failed 3-2. Thank you. Okay, we are we're entering into our public hearing. And if I have there you go. I was looking for our planning director to appear to give us a little intro here to this public hearing for voluntary annexation of property owned by William C. Honeycutt Jr. et al.
So as you said, this is a voluntary annexation, and it is, did we actually open the public hearing? I didn't hear, or just,
Just, you'll end up giving evidence or giving information.
You know I
Just go
will.
ahead and open the public hearing.
Mr.
I'll open the
Mayor,
public hearing afterwards.
No, let's do it. The problem with is I'm gonna get this quasi-judicial fix to me being a lawyer, but you're getting information that's going in the record and you haven't opened the public hearing. And invariably, it isn't just an introduction, you're actually getting information you can base your decision on.
Okay.
So I think it's best just open the public hearing.
Very good, then. I'd entertain a motion. We enter into public hearing to consider the voluntary annexation of property owned by William C. Honeycutt Jr. et al.
So moved.
All right, any discussion? If not, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Great, thank you all. And now, Jessica.
thank you. This is a voluntary annexation for 16 and a half acres that is just off Brooks Cove Road. It is a contiguous annexation. It's a voluntary request being made by the owner, as our ordinance requires, such an application to be made for water to be, service to be entertained for future development. It's in its natural state right now. It is wooded, and it has about 14% slope average. And the application was made in late October. It was certified by the town. It was complete and is now available for your consideration.
Very good. Do we, at this point, hear from any comments from the public?
Probably needed more detail if you're either, I don't know if the applicant's gonna make an appearance directly or via the internet, or if we need to just get additional information that has been presented for Jessica past due.
Okay, any additional information then? And Q
I-
questions from the board?
Yeah. As far as she can answer, obviously, there'll be some for the question for the applicant.
Yes, okay, and I will say that the planning board did hear this and make comment, and they supported this application unanimously. There was some concern expressed by the community, and I imagine you'll be hearing from them tonight.
Can you tell us, if this passes, does it then go to the county or is it officially, is this kind of the?
Once it's filed with the state, it's.
To the state.
it's done, yeah.
So the comments I have, I think, are more appropriate for the next agenda item.
Okay.
I think pretty much everybody that commented didn't have, what was in support of, for more or less an annexation.
It's more the zoning issue.
Yeah.
Very good. So is Jessica to speak?
We're trying to get his attention.
just 1 second, and we should be able to.
So the one thing that while we're waiting for Jesse Gardner, who, for any public listening, is the engineer for both these owners. He represents the owners that's who's making this petition for annexation. And Jesse also works with the developers who would be developing the property after annexation. So my question, which I expressed at the agenda meeting, was that the board understand and with the help of town attorney, obligations the town has when we annex property. Ron, if you could help us just a little bit with that.
Well, obviously, the first obligation is to send a tax bill. But annexing them does nothing but bring them into the town. It does make them eligible to have town water. They will be entitled to the other town services, fire protection they already get, police service, garbage pickup, those things. There's an issue here with a street that is a city street that farther down the process you'll be looking at considering. But those are the town's direct obligations. There is a concern, and this is dependent on something that's not even before you, will be a site plan approval at some point. Numbers, lots they plan to develop, whether or not there should be a traffic study, whether something needs to be done with the roads. That's 2 steps away from us. The first consideration is just annexation, the direct services we have to provide.
Right. So I'll offer this just because it may not be part of the discussion, but it's at least part of may not be something we can discuss or really determine. But it seems to me it just goes hand in hand that if the property's annexed and we know that the developer's right behind, I mean, it's coming, Jesse Gardner represents both. And so, we know that the property is going to be developed. I just offer this comment that if the road requires attention, and it's going to be once it's annexed, the road is belongs to the town of Black Mountain, and so that's okay. I mean, we have a lot of roads that require attention that belong to the town of Black Mountain, and we prioritize those, and we have a list that goes by priority as to what will be addressed for paving and for street, spending our dollars, for road improvements, street improvements, for those roads that are our responsibility. And so my concern is the fairness of, or just the reality of where would this project fit in what we already have as a priority list. And I, personally for me, I'm fine and in favor of the annexation. It's voluntary, and I'm all for promoting, development in a planned and thoughtful way within town. But that's just a concern I have. I don't know that that needs to sway. I'm not trying to sway your opinion about annexation. I think it's just something that we need to be aware of, and that we want to make the developer and Jesse aware of, that we may not really know the priority and how we can spend, or depends on how much, on street improvement. And so that, I think the timing of it is probably more the question than the cost. I mean, the cost is going to be whatever the cost is, which is true with all of our road projects. But it's the prioritization of it that seems to me you have to sort of think through a bit. Is that fair to others, to our other taxpayers? Sure. And I just leave it at that. That's the only concern I have, which is not really against the annexation, but it's just, I think, something we want to keep in mind.
Something that the board is probably already aware of is the properties there and available for development, whether or not we annex them. It's available for development. I think the information will come in. It's available for fairly dense development, whether or not we take it in. But it's still going to be our street no matter which way we go. If we don't annex, we have no control. If we annex, we will have at least a little bit of control and leverage.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Black Mountain does not exercise extraterritorial jurisdiction, which is how a lot of cities, knowing that in time this is going to be ours, how do we control things along the fringes so that they're not radically different from what's just across the town line. So the position you're in is not having ETJ. Probably want to consider that at least that modicum of control you get, it is annexed, as opposed to when it's not annexed.
Can you even do ETJ now?
It's still available. Obviously, the city of Asheville and the town of Boone cannot. The legislature.
I guess that's what I was thinking. It's just those
But it
two.
still exists.
Just those two.
There may be others downstate, but those seem to be the target when they're taking away ETJs.
I think ultimate.
So Attorney Sneed, I have one question. So let me know if I understand you correctly. So whether or not we annex the property or not, it's still going to be developed. Is it still going to be developed under UR8, even if we don't annex
No,
it?
it will be annexed under the county zoning, which Jessica can give you the details on what the county zoning is on that tract.
It's currently R1,
Or
which
one,
allows 10 units an acre.
which allows 10, and UR8 allows 8.
R1 is the county zoning.
I got
Yes, it is currently zoned. It's not an unzoned property. It is in the county.
Got it.
Yes.
But that's a good point about the road. The road, we own the road going in there regardless.
That's correct.
No matter whose jurisdiction it is.
It's still a matter of prioritization that comes up, but that's just, like I said, I'm not trying to necessarily speak against the annexation. I think that's just something we have to keep in mind. And be upfront, if Jesse's probably listening, even though it sounds like he's not being able to get through. It's something.
I think we should be able to hear him.
He should be able to talk.
Yeah. May I ask one question, a process question?
Certainly.
Just in terms of process, so are the the annexation question and the zoning question completely separate issues?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
You're having to, if I may jump in, obviously in your head, you're having to mix the two, but we don't have the authority to set zoning until we've
Until
annexed.
after, yeah.
We cannot zone something that's not in their jurisdiction.
Okay.
But when it comes to the zoning question, is it either UR8 or nothing? I mean, do we have any flexibility there in terms of what it gets rezoned to?
Yes.
That's
Okay.
kind of, yeah.
Yep.
That's, yeah.
Okay, so are there any other questions while we're waiting? If Jess, and Jess may not, I mean, I think he sent everyone separately a note just inviting each of us to communicate with him because of the, just what it is with the difficulty in communicating during these virtual meetings. And so, I did speak to him and I, I don't have any information to add. It was a helpful conversation just to make sure that I understood, what I think all the information, nothing that you haven't been presented, but, he's representing also the developers. And so, that's probably more where the communication from Jesse will become more important. So, any other questions for town attorney or Josh or Jessica? So, at this point in time, do we have any, we could look to hear from the public?
I'm gonna try to jump in, hold on one second.
Okay.
Can you, hold on, 1 second.
Yeah, now
We can
I
hear.
can hear you now.
Quickly, I understand this is a two-motion, process, one to annex and one to zone the property. But respectfully, I'm trying to thread the needle with a seller that, wants to, sell this property to, a client, and if we requested UR8 zoning on our application, and that's what's made it to this board with a recommendation from the planning board. If we feel like that's not going to be the case, I would be more interested in probably withdrawing the application. As, it is currently zoned for 10 units an acre in the county, and if it were to be annexed and zoning not follow the previous recommendations, it becomes this project may die, and it reduces, it's not what the current owner would want either, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it does. I think it does.
Feels like I had a little bit of the zoning discussion. I think it's perfect to this.
Attorney Sneed?
It's a nice mix it's probably the information that you're pounding around in your head anyway. But, as I stated at the agenda meeting, in the course of annexing, you think about, would we annex if this property is put into its highest and most intense use? What Jess is saying is, if the owner doesn't think he's gonna get that highest and most intense use of the property residentially, then he would withdraw his application for rezoning or annexation for an obvious reason. This is a difficult predicament where you can't pass an ordinance to annex if the zoning goes to suit him, and it's not effective if he doesn't. And the hard part is, once you annex, only the legislature can de-annex. So that's why Jesse's sweating bullets over there that you'll annex and tell him he's going to be TR4. He's got to go back and tell the owner and the developer that it just went down the tubes for them. So he's asking probably for some sort of sense of whether or not this board will allow UR8 if it does annex. If this board is inclined not to go UR8, he wants to withdraw that application. And like I said, he's threading a needle, asking this board to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
Attorney Sneed, if that is a viable conversation for this board to have, I could forego the nitty gritty of the staff report and kind of give some highlights of things that might support that discussion, if that's an order of operations that is okay.
I think that's probably going to happen here
Okay.
Or we said we created a combo position either for the town or for the applicant.
Okay. So I do want to emphasize that this parcel abuts UR8, and so anything other than UR8 would be a spot zone, which would create a different conversation altogether. And so I do want to make note of that. The properties that are in the town, in that area, currently exist at that district. If zoned UR8, it does provide the developer an opportunity to use smaller lot sizes, which allows a development to be condensed into a smaller footprint on a parcel as opposed to being spread out. So if you were to use TR4, for example, the idea of lower density may leave some sort of anxiety about density. However, it actually pushes a larger footprint and would actually promote more clearing of that parcel. I do not know what their sole intention is. I can't speak to that, but just mathematically, I do want to kind of emphasize that is kind of how that lot size works when it's on the ground. Also, if a parcel is in the town limits, it's going to be subject to our post-construction stormwater ordinance, which is significantly more restrictive than the counties. And also importantly is that the density max is going to be 8 units at UR8. It is 10 in the county. The intensities in use are relatively similar, and you have those in your packet. We can go through those one by one in a rezoning hearing, but they are similar in nature. There are a few one-off, more intense uses that the county allows related to utilities. There is a stream that runs through it. We have a stream buffer ordinance, so it's the county. So any sort of neighborhood development would not qualify for a reduction in that buffer area. And I think that it is something that Jesse is probably going to note, that when this parcel was originally platted out, it was platted at a much more intense use for residential use than they've been discussing, or even in UR8. Much of the town was originally platted at very high intensity. Jesse has shared with me that they're interested in 3 units an acre. And at this time, if that were to come to fruition, that would not trigger a traffic impact analysis. That is at 75 units. And as you were mentioning earlier, Mayor Harris, issues with the road are going to be one way or the other. And I think that's something that we have to remember, that we have a little bit of opportunity here to work on that road when if annexed, as opposed to if it's remained in the county. So those are sort of some of my initial thoughts.
Right. My comment's not so much the cost, repairing the road or whatever we might need to do to it. It's just the timing of it and priority and so forth, just to get that discussion out there. I wonder if I could make and of course, I'm not trying to draw the questions or whatever to a close, but if it's a consideration for the board in reaching a decision here, that you would want to offer a motion against this annexation if you feel like that you are very much opposed to the upcoming zoning request.
We have, he would like to add just a little bit more.
Is that fair to say, Mr. Sneed?
You're trying to.
I mean, that'll get you there.
Almost
That
have to
would
get the
be,
cart before the horse,
that would
but
be
you're
a
right.
reason that you might want to make a motion to oppose the annexation if you cannot, if you in your mind, you cannot support the UR8 zoning request.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. And Jessica, maybe you can answer this question for me. Of all the adjacent UR8 properties, are any of those developed as a UR8 property?
They are all zoned. I do not have a density count for the area.
Well, I went and visited the property with some of the residents, and I didn't see any of the adjacent properties that were developed that way.
I agree with Tim. I went through it as well.
I did a zoning through. I very much know the area also, and, even though they're not a but to the UR8, there's some, most of it's R2.
SR2.
Yes, R2, within a couple of 100 feet from that position. So I was just wondering the same thing Alderman Raines was asking.
And the other thing I would add, I don't know that this is something that if you're not certain of the decision, and it's an important decision and difficult to reverse. You know, it'd be one thing if it was an easy matter to deal with it, but it's not easy it's a longer process to reverse it. Should the board want to do that, is you might want to table it. You might want, if you haven't had any opportunity to visit with Jesse Gardner, you might want to do that. But that's another option if you're not quite ready to make a decision tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I think Jesse had something he wanted to say.
Yeah, Mayor, can you hear me?
I can.
We lost a little bit of Alderman Raines' questions, but I'm happy to give more color of what we're proposing on this project right now prior to the annexation vote. And I can go ahead and kind of give you my full spiel that I was planning. I just, again, I'm trying to look for and maybe you resolved it with yourselves with, I don't want to be annexed because we can't undo it, right? And whether it's a continuance or something else, you know, I'd prefer to use the time and tell you what we're here now and tell you what we got planned and help you make as educated as a decision as possible, if that's appropriate at this time.
Well, thank you. Let me just ask the board what their pleasure is on it. If the board is inclined to want to proceed and make a decision tonight, that's what you'd want to do. And if you think you would like to take more time, then we probably could ask Jesse to come to our next board meeting and we can take the matter up, but it's up to you.
I'm prepared to hear his presentation tonight and make a decision.
Okay?
I would also, I know there are a lot of citizen comments as well, on the zoning in particular. So if we're going to be discussing the zoning, we might want to hear those as well.
I agree with that. Good?
I'm in agreement.
Very good. Well, why don't we do this, since I think that we're getting into the middle ground a bit more, why don't we hear the citizen comments at this point in time, if that's appropriate?
For the,
Is it, Attorney
This is
Steve?
one of those hearings where it's become, it's not, I don't know if you call it appropriate, inappropriate, but if the annexation is going to hinge on basically an unspoken zoning decision, they probably want to hear those before that vote's taken on annexation.
Right.
I'm gonna read this one that was sent in after the case, or after 5 o'clock, or 6 o'clock, so I don't forget it, because it's the only one I've got via email. All right, dear Mayor and members of the Board of Aldermen, I write you this evening as a neighboring property owner. Several months ago, my wife and I purchased 2 parcels of land totaling 3.4 acres located at 201 and 207 Old Toll Road. The property is located in the unincorporated area of Buncombe County to the west of town limits of Black Mountain. Property has an old commercial automobile painting shop on it, which has been abandoned for about a decade, as well as one modest home. Our intent is to fix up the existing home on the property, decommission the old auto body paint shop, and to build a number of attractive smaller homes and cottages on the property, which can be sold or rented at a price that regular people in our community can afford. It is not clear to me at this moment whether the land use permitting for our property will be through the Buncombe County Planning Office or the town of Black Mountain. It is currently under county zoning and has existing water service on the property. However, based on the process the Honeycutt property is going through, perhaps our property will need to be reviewed by Black Mountain as well. I am not certain, since it is possible it will. I wanted to share my perspective. While I have not studied the project proposed on the Honeycutt property, in enough detail to have a specific position, I do want to express a concern about any precedent that could potentially constrain the use of our property to 1/2 acre lots. In order to make the new homes on our property affordable to regular people and not just the very wealthy, our vision is to build smaller cottage-type homes on smaller lots while preserving as much of the wooded character of the property as possible, especially mature hardwood trees. If we were constrained to only building on lots that are 1/2 acre or larger, the only way to recoup our investment in purchasing the property and building the necessary infrastructure would be to build much larger homes that would be well out of the price range of most working families in our community. While this could likely be a successful business plan for the property, simply building expensive homes for the very affluent was never our goal for purchasing this property. We would like for our property to be used to meet a real need in our community for quality, attractive homes that regular people can afford. The facts involved in the two properties are different. Our property is accessed on Old Toll Road, which is a larger street than Brooks Cove Road and does not pass through an extensive residential area. Our property is already somewhat developed for residential and past commercial uses. Nevertheless, I wanted to share my concern that if we are required to voluntarily annex in Black Mountain, my hope is that we would be able to follow a land use designation similar to what the current county zoning, rather than being significantly downzoned. Thank you for taking the time to consider these comments, and thank you for your service to the community. Sincerely, Brownie Newman, 285 Montford Avenue, Asheville. All right, let's see. Okay, the purpose of this email is to express our concern for the rezoning of the property listed above from R1 to UR8. Town of Black Mountain Planning Board passed a motion to recommend this property be rezoned UR8. We request this communication be placed on the official record. Brooks Cove Road is a low-density neighborhood located off McCoy Cove Road. There are approximately 15 single-family residences located on Brooks Cove Road. The current width of Brooks Cove Road is 12 to 14 feet. Brooks Cove Road is a single-lane dead-end road with no turnaround. Many of the property owners on Brooks Cove Road have lived here for over 40 years. This is an older aged residential neighborhood with limited access to technology. Therefore, their voices may not be heard adequately. We have no objections to this property being annexed in town limits. However, we do have concerns for the property being zoned UR8. When Brooks Cove Road was rezoned in 2010, there were no notification letters mailed to the residents concerning this blanket rezoning. This occurred throughout areas of Black Mountain. We acknowledge you may have not been part of the board then. However, the neighborhood on Brooks Cove does not resemble UR8. For the designation of UR8, this could potentially mean up to 128 homes could be built on the 16 acres. This would drastically change the demographics of this neighborhood. The people in the neighborhood have worked hard for what they have and are concerned the overall good of the neighborhood is not being considered. We respectfully ask the Board of Aldermen to consider the following concerning viewpoints before voting on the 11th of January. Who will be responsible for upgrading Brooks Cove Road to be brought up to state standards? And is there enough property on each side of the existing road to have state mandated right-of-way? Where is the second access into this property, which will provide the necessary egress needed for a major subdivision if one is built? The consideration of the major development will impact this street tremendously. Brooks Cove Road is not wide enough for two cars to pass and poses safety concerns. The town will have to make upgrades to the existing road at taxpayers' expense to accommodate this many homes. We have concerns about the increased stormwater runoff. This neighborhood is already dealing with an increase of stormwater runoff from the development of Thicket Lane above said property. The creek that runs through the middle of this property is prone to flooding and has entered Brooks Cove Road in the recent past. Development of this property would only increase more flooding concerns. Are board members aware of the swampy area that runs alongside the creek that could be considered a protected wetland? How will the town change the zoning on this property outside of the city limits benefit the town and its residents? Why was this property being considered for rezoning prior to annexation? Town of Black Mountain Planning Board passed a motion to recommend this property to be zoned UR8 based solely on zoning of the adjacent property in the neighborhood. If that is the deciding factor, then all property in town limits should be zoned UR8. Is this rezoning a conditional request from the property owner to be annexed in the town limits? This assumption is based on rezoning property before annexation, which I think gets to kind of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, it's a problem.
It was stated in the planning board meeting around 50 homes would be built on this property, but once this is zoned UR8, that can all change. In the future, this could include townhomes, apartments, etc. If this contingent sale fails, then what about the next developer's plan? Property owners within 200 feet of said property received notice of the special call planning board meeting one day prior to the meeting on December 15th. We believe this is an adequate notification by the town. Closing remarks. Transparency and community input are essential for reasonable controlled growth while keeping the identity of our small town. We hope our elected leaders representing us will take into consideration all factors and make the right decision for zoning this property once it has been annexed into town limits. While we have no objections to individual property owners building independent houses, large or small, on their property, we do not agree with the proposal to rezone an area of our neighborhood from residential to urban residential. The neighborhood on Brooks Cove Road does not resemble UR8. We respectfully ask each board member to make a site visit to Brooks Cove Road and the above mentioned property before the board meeting on the 11th of January. In addition, we ask board members to consider rezoning this property to SR2. We believe that if annexation of this property occurs and is rezoned by the town to SR2, if developed, the property would coexist with the demographics of this neighborhood. Nathan, the Patchett family. While I support infill development in principle, in my opinion, the property being considered for annexation is not suited for development at 8 units per acre. Also, despite the underlying zoning, the adjacent lots are built out at less than 2 units per acre. Such a dense development would interfere with the residential nature of the area per the zoning ordinance. The UR8 zoning designation is inconsistent with the current usage in the neighborhood. The suggested rationale is that the adjacent city lots are zoned R8, I think he meant UR8, and therefore it is appropriate to zone this property with the same density allowance. While on paper this may be true, on the ground the reality is quite different. There are 7 city lots that are adjacent to this property, all single-family dwellings. The average lot size is 0.61 acres. The density allowance on the subject property, if zoned UR8, would be 5,445 square foot per lot, or more than 5 times the density of the adjacent properties. This would negatively affect the quiet enjoyment of the neighbors. The topography and riparian limitations on the subject property do not support such dense development. There are 2 streams that run through the property which encompass some 5 acres in unbuildable floodplain. The west side of the property has a 25% slope which would further limit such a dense development. The single lane access road cannot safely support additional traffic from such a dense development. The developer has stated publicly that they could likely only get 60 lots out of the 16.81 acre parcel. If it was annexed with a zoning of TR4 instead, they would be allowed to build 64 lots, which would permit them the density that they have acknowledged is suitable for this property. If you agree to annex the property at the UR8 zoning, you would be putting the town at risk of having to battle a site plan proposal that may not be in the town's long-term interest. Keep some control on its future usage by giving it a zoning that is appropriate for that property and the neighborhood. The developer has petitioned us to be within city limits. The town is not under any obligation to meet their demands. If you decide to annex a property, do so under terms that make sense for the property and that is appropriate for the neighborhood. Let's not create a potential headache for the town in the future when there is no compelling reason to do so. Thank you for your consideration. Sean Sloan, 115 3rd Street. And I think this is one where someone called in to Savannah. Carl and Barbara Tweed at 115 Brooks Cove. They are concerned about the annexation and rezoning of Brooks Cove Road. It will cause water runoff, which will damage our property. David and Karen Fox. While I don't reside on Brooks Cove, I do live off of McCoy Cove. Brooks and McCoy are both narrow roads that barely handle the current traffic. The length of McCoy are tire tracks on both sides of the roads due to close proximity when standard vehicles pass one another. Trash trucks, large equipment, box trucks all require a standard vehicle to pull as far off as possible in weight. While Brooks is early on McCoy, one of the worst spots to encounter people is at the bottom of the first hill. Mailboxes and a deep ditch on a blind curve make it a guessing game every time. The roads as they are cannot support an additional 40 to 90 minimum cars, even for a short distance. If the rezoning is approved, the town needs to be ready to address this issue. I suggest a traffic and environmental impact study to take place before a decision is made. And if approved, the developer should be financially responsible for any road projects, as well as environmental management rather than the town of Black Mountain. We appreciate your careful consideration. I am writing against passage of rezoning to UR8. That level of density is out of keeping with the immediate area. A change to that designation also would significantly impact already strained infrastructure. I would be content with a change to a designation that would allow a less dense development. Mike Barker, 118 Old State 10 Road, Black Mountain. Good afternoon. I'm writing this in response to a proposed rezoning annexation of subject property off Brooks Cove Road. I'm also speaking for Barbara and Carl Tweed, which I just read to you a couple of comments ago. We are supportive of the annexation if zoned SR2. The UR8, as supported by the Town Planning Board, does not fit the neighborhood. This will ultimately change this neighborhood for the worse. This neighborhood looks nothing like UR8 designation, which was changed without adequate input. Negatives. Road is narrow and cannot handle the volume of traffic that would come from such a development. It is already impassable when vehicles meet. This forces folks to pull into other people's yards, drives, and drainage ditches. The road would require widening, culvert installation, and possibly traffic calming bumps. Is the town prepared to fix the road? At what cost? And what time frame? Stormwater runoff is my main concern, as my parents' property and my own parcel are directly adjacent to the creek. This creek, in my 40-plus years, has never been an issue flooding until recently. Uncontrolled growth above has created increased stormwater runoff into the creek. Recently, the water has started to crest the banks and has flooded their backyard and garage. This is a first in over 42 years of living here. Now more building, even with stormwater mitigation, will just exacerbate this issue. Who will be responsible if this happens? I was told by someone with the project, someone always lives downstream. This was and is a dismissive statement that draws real concerns. So they are saying we will do what we can, but beyond that, it's not our concern. If this project puts even 3% more water in the creek, that is enough to create problems that will cost me and my family thousands to remedy. Using the rationale that because its borders UR8 designated property is why it should be designated the same does not hold water. This area was recently changed without input of the families that live there. So if it can be changed at a whim, then it can just as easily be ignored now and made the correct designation of SR2, which is also near the property by a few hundred feet. The subject property closer resembles the property just above Brooks Cove that is designated as such. I have spoken with most of the elderly that live in this area, and they are also not supportive of this project. I hope you will take them into consideration when making your decision. We know growth is inevitable. This growth needs to be sustainable and controlled. If comments are being read, sorry about that. I'm very hopeful you will use this as a precedent of what you wish Black Mountain to become in the future and not rubber stamp has been done in the past. Controlled, sustainable, and working with your neighbors is a great legacy. Thanks for your time, Heath Tweed. First, let's ask, what is Black Mountain's current plan to promote environmentally sound development and diverse options for all potential living spaces needed? This question has been asked every year that we've lived here. We have not seen viable answers to date as development continues to run rampant and citizen voices are not heeded. In concerning this property at Brooks Cove Road, owned by Honeycutt, we urge you to listen to those who live around this property and have for many years. We urge you to consider all the detrimental effects UR8 will have on the environment, traffic, stormwater, and daily life. UR8 should not be a button that is pushed for every area of our town. Years ago, the push to rezone areas to UR8 was done and thought to be a solution to creating more affordable housing. That has failed big time, with expensive homes squeezed together with little regard for environment and neighborhood character. Are we trying to preserve our small town character or compete with Asheville's density? We agree with Nathan Paget as well as others opposing UR8 being granted to this property. Sincerely, Weston and Kirsten Hall. I support in its entirety the letter presented to you by the Paget family in regards to this matter. We must not destroy the integrity of the infrastructure of our community in all neighborhoods. What is outlined below is reason enough to rescind the rezoning or the UR8 zoning of this property. And she just outlines the same statements that were made by the Pagets. And that is Karen Paquette, 203 East College Street. Good afternoon, Mayor Harris, Vice Mayor Stone, Alderman Keene, Raines, and Pertiller. The email is being sent for your consideration the rezoning of this property. It is our understanding the Town of Black Mountain Planning Board passed a motion to recommend this property be rezoned to UR8. At this time, the property is zoned R1. Due to the COVID restrictions, we are unable to attend the public meetings. Therefore, we're asking you to read this email to me. Brooks Cove Road is a low-density neighborhood located off McCoy Cove Road with approximately 15 single-family residences. Brooks Cove Road is a single-lane, dead-end road with no turnaround. The current width of Brooks Cove Road is 12 to 14 feet. The road will need to be brought up to state standards. Our concerns are who will be responsible for this upgrade, and is there enough property on each side of the existing road to have the state mandated right-of-way. Major subdivision requires an ingress and egress. Where will the second access into this property be located? Question mark. Brooks Cove Road is not wide enough for 2 cars to pass, and a major development will impact this street. Due to a lot of elderly homeowners on Brooks Cove Road, this road should not be blocked during construction. Many of these residents have had medical issues, have daily doctor's appointments, or have required an ambulance. While there are no objections from our family to this property being annexed into town limits, we do have an issue with the property being rezoned UR8. Purpose of the land use code in Black Mountain is to ensure economically sound development and to protect existing property values within the town of Black Mountain. Our question is, how will the town changing the zoning on the property benefit the town and its residents? Question mark. There will be increased stormwater runoff. This neighborhood had an increase of stormwater runoff from the Thicket Lane development. Board members may not have walked this property, so you may not realize there's a creek that runs through the middle of the property. It's prone to flooding and will enter Brooks Cove Road. Who will be responsible for the improvements to control this stormwater runoff? Question mark. When considering rezoning property, the demographics and overall good of the neighborhood should be closely scrutinized. For reasonable control growth to happen in our small town, transparency and community input are essential. If you look at the current neighborhood of Brooks Cove Road, it does not fit UR8. As stated above, we have no objections to annexation. We respectfully ask you to consider zoning this property SR2 so it maintains the current look and feel of the neighborhood. It's our hope you delay the decision to rezone this property until further answers are obtained and all the board members may have a chance to visit this property. Citizens would like to know their voices are being heard by our elected officials. Thank you for your service to the people of Black Mountain. Robert and Barbara Harris, Keith and Greg Harris. Almost done. To whom it may concern, I live on Brooks Cove Road across from the property that is going to be developed. The town has an opportunity to make a reasonable and responsible decision regarding the property in question on Brooks Cove Road. I request that you take the concerns of the families that have lived on this road for generations in consideration and rezone this area appropriately. The demographics and geography of this area should dictate for zoning that promotes the least amount of density possible. David Mundy. Mayor and Board of Aldermen, I was poised to write a lengthy letter regarding the above annexation rezoning, but then I read the pageant's letter and realized that it said it all and said it clearly, factually, and eloquently. Aldermen, do the right thing, vote your conscience, vote your integrity, not only for the Paget family and their neighbors, but for the town, for all citizens, and for future generations. I hope you all took the time to visit the site, drive on that narrow road, and literally see all the possible ramifications firsthand. It does make a difference. The strain on that narrow road, on the stormwater drainage, and on an older, low-density neighborhood would be difficult, inappropriate, and unnecessary. UR8 allowing 8 houses per acre or 128 houses on the 16 acres is just not appropriate or reasonable. Certainly you, in your wisdom and responsibility, can see the need for much less density, perhaps SR2. As the pageant stated so clearly, we as a town need to take our time to really think about this. There's no need to rush, since responsible, sustainable, and planned control growth is something most folks seem to agree on. This is an opportunity to show how that can be done. I would ask that you enter sincerely Bill McGuire, 200 View Street, Black Mountain. And actually, that is it. The next one is for a different public hearing, so that's your comments.
Very good. Is it the board's wishes to hear from Jesse Gardner now?
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We can hear you, Jesse.
Okay, good. Mayor, board, I do want to thank you guys for allowing us to have this discussion. It is, precarious. We're trying to thread a needle here and represent 2 people. I do want to thank staff for honestly getting us to this point. I started looking at this property probably in the 4th quarter of last year. So we've invested a lot of time and resources to honestly get to this point, but we are still early in this stage. I do have, I'm going to talk in the presumptive of just kind of like what we're thinking that goes on with this property, because I think it does have some impact and how you guys will end up making a decision on it. The current owner is Bill Honeycutt, and he was unable to attend the meeting tonight. He might be watching, but wasn't be able to get in the same room with me. I also have my client Scott Street, who is with Windsor Bill and Windsor Archery. He's the group that has the property under contract. Scott has developed many communities in Buncombe and Henderson County and has been developing communities since 1987 in Western North Carolina. Basically, you know the stats that Jessica provided in her staff report relate to, this is 16.5 acre tract. It has water and sewer available in Brooks Cove Road. So immediately access to public water and sewer. Average natural slope is under 15%. And if you go back to our comprehensive plan that has been in place and is our vision and guiding documents as a town, and me being a planning board member and assist in developing this from a community member process, is these are the areas we should encourage development. Mr. Brownie Newman's email hit a lot of these highlights that, that us as a community in Black Mountain should be considered, is affordability, market supply and demand currently. I think everybody knows where the real estate market is and how prices are continued to go up and go up. And the fact that, development is coming and we have some guidelines in I believe our draft plan of our draft comprehensive plan that should be rolling out soon, of combating urban sprawl in the county, and encouraging it. We should be encouraging development in the areas where public water and sewer are available. And so I believe we put together a really good team to look at this. We are requesting UR8, but I have also only requested access for water and sewer and allocation letters to the town for 50 single family homes. So that boils down to a density of 3 units per acre for the most part. Our plan, though it's just sort of a high level conceptual plan, is to be a part of this town, be a member, build a community that meets a more stringent ordinance. As we come into the town has a much stronger stormwater ordinance than the county does. We're willing to invest in that and be members and do a higher development. This project's 15 acres, does fall in the McCoy Cove area, which is, I think, a 400 acre drainage basin. We are a little more than 3.5% of that by acreage volume. Nobody that I'm aware of upstream has any stormwater infrastructure that both does mitigation and water quality treatment. Town ordinances require us to, and we're happy to be a part of that. We also plan to upgrade Brooks Cove Road for our entire frontage. I went out to Brooks Cove this morning just to take measurements and know exactly what it looks like, and knowing that would be a point of conversation. Brooks Cove is narrow. It does need to be widened to be safe for 2 cars to pass. On average, it is about 16 foot wide when it's running east. And then when it turns north along our property frontage, it narrows down to about 14 foot wide. We have approximately 750 feet of frontage along Brooks Cove that we have planned to widen to the 4 feet to get it up to 18 foot width to our side. And so we do feel like we're going to cover our needs or the community needs in widening Brooks Cove Road. The remaining part, which is another, I think, 800 feet, we're willing to have that conversation with you on what that looks like and participate. But the development of this property, in order to meet the price point, and stay at what we believe is a reasonable density of 3 units per acre does need to be the UR8 zoning. And there's a multitude of things that goes in with that. Is yes, this property has a stream that runs through it, and yes, I'm gonna I have to keep a 30-foot stream buffer on each side within the town of Black Mountain. That works out to about 2.5 acres of green space that we don't touch. You know, we also plan the walking trail, which kind of exists out there today. We want to improve that and use that along the stream to make it an amenity. That's something the county side development side wouldn't require, but we're more than willing to be a part as we develop this community. And additionally, when the URA allows me to cluster developments or cluster the lots and keep smaller footprints and keep more affordable pricing. Very similar to the same reasonings of Mr. Newman, who's interested in developing the property to the south. We're trying to build affordable communities in the Black Mountain area to provide housing both for families, seniors, first-time home buyers, all the above. And those are, density is not a good way to judge a property, because rarely, though it's UR8, rarely can I get 8 units on it per acre. The town requires 40 to 50 foot road right of ways as we develop into the property. The town will require us to provide open space. At the UR8 level, we're allowed to keep a good buffer from the eastern property side and keep up to 2.5 acres of green space on this property. And so those are the goals we're going into this. Development's not something new ever proposed out here. I include, as Jessica mentioned, I included a plat from 1934, Mountain View Estates, which showed quite a bit of plans all along Laurel and Brooks Cove. And I'm pretty sure most of the deeds referenced in the properties through the years refer back to this plat. Again, the county allows 10 units an acre. We want to build a well-planned community. I proactively reached out to the neighborhood. As I grew up 2 roads down the road, know them pretty well, and after the planning board meeting, wanted to give them more clarity of what's being proposed. It is always a tough situation when a project happens in your backyard or closer to home, and this one's really close to my personal home and where I grew up. And we're really, I met with them. I definitely heard their concerns. I plan, assuming this becomes a project, I want to make them part of the design process, and told them I'd come back out there, work with their concerns and design around their concerns. But we're here at step 1, understanding annexation and what rules we're technically designing to. And so I'm happy to answer questions about any of the other concerns. I think the town of Black Mountain ordinances, I think developing this property in the town of Black Mountain helps relieve a lot more concerns in the community, as the ordinances that Black Mountain has versus the county speak to those. And we're willing to develop to a higher level of bar and okay with that. But again, happy to answer any specific questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and appreciate staff's help getting to this point.
Thank you, Jesse. We appreciate those comments. Board, any questions for Jesse Gardner?
Mr. Gardner, this is Pam King. Can you help me understand how the construction process would work on that little road and the big trucks required and so on? I mean, I'm just thinking of that impact on the residents.
As in, do you want me to describe how beginning to end of construction, or do you want me are you more specific to the road?
Right, I'm more specific about how are they gonna get in and out if there's a lot of construction traffic on their little road.
You know, so during construction, there'll be construction traffic, but, you know, the traffic amount is less of a concern. I think road width is a priority, to make this road safe. You know, as I first visited, it's 2 feet shy of normal. If we were to move into development, we would be looking to make sure the road in front of our project is already 18 foot wide before we started going into more dense construction or heavy equipment construction. And so that would be one of the things we'd tackle first before full site work development began.
Thank you, that helps me understand.
Say that again,
I
Ms.
said, thank you,
King?
that helps me understand.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, okay.
Any other questions for Jesse?
Mr. Gardner, this is Tim Raines. Of the 50 single-family houses that you're proposing, and you said that it's going to be affordable housing, what's going to be the average price for those homes?
That's getting about 4 steps down the road.
Sorry.
Let me throw the caveat in here. I've said a lot earlier on that might sound like I was encouraging this project, but I do have to tell you that although it might make you feel a little bit better going forward, since you've got to think about UR8, and if you don't like it, you're going to vote against annexation, is that what Jesse says their plans might be, you've got to make your decision on probably the highest and most dense use that can be made in UR8. Some of the things that you got in Jesse help tell you that. You know that you got the stream buffer. You know you're losing 2.5 acres for the stream buffer. You know if a lot can't be more than 5,000 square feet, that is limiting it. But that's as far as the information he's providing you is of use to you. Anything else about the plan, whether it's going to be affordable, how many actual houses they're going to have, that's a site plan that's down the road that you can't make your decision on tonight. You got to gather what facts you can as what might fit on this property if it's most dense, counting for the things the information he did provide you, and then decide backwards, of course, is that acceptable to me? If that's acceptable to you, then you're back to the first question, will we annex? I think what's being proposed, and the mayor put it that way, is if you don't think at the second phase of voting, you can go UR8, then you need to entertain a motion not to annex. But again, you've got to think in the highest and most dense values and not what might actually be proposed. And I didn't mean to interrupt Mr. Raines, but that is a site plan question, if we ever get that far, for another day as what goes in. We don't have a requirement for affordable housing. We do have density bonuses for affordable housing.
Questions for Jesse Gardner, or any other questions for that matter?
I think what I'm wrestling with here is that is whether we believe that it's going to be developed either way, and if we can, if annexing the property is going to put tighter restrictions with water runoff and other environmentally sound development, then is that the right thing for us to do if it's going to be developed at R1 regardless?
We don't know that it is, but we know it has the potential
Right,
capability
right.
to be developed at R1.
I do have some questions about the road, if now is an appropriate time to ask them.
Sure, I think, and Jesse would be.
Well,
Want
it's
to
actually
do
more
it too.
for the sections of road that he wouldn't be expanding. How does that work as a resident along that road? If they need to expand into the yard, is it the property owner's responsibility to move mailboxes and ditches and that kind of thing?
There's a 30-foot platted right of way. So that's how much the room there is to work with.
Okay.
including the existing.
Right.
Any other questions?
If it might be a little more direct answer to Trey's question is, who would be responsible for relocating ditches and mailboxes? Typically, the town has taken that on in a public works project. And I point there sidewalks, for instance, where we put in sidewalks, with the town as part of their construction, is taking care of the amenities of the neighbors as they went by.
So does that get back to the mayor's question about timing? Like, they don't go to the top of the list ahead of all our other projects.
It's just something we have to keep in mind. It's a decision that has to be made. You know, as I said, I didn't bring that up to, try to discourage it at all. I just wanted it to be something that it wasn't a surprise when we need to address that, should we need to address that. And to remind you of Attorney Sneed's comment, it has to be addressed. Some of that road's our responsibility now. So,
In this map of the annexation, there's a small plot that looks like would remain county property, is that right? In the agenda packet?
It's probably something, it is gonna remain county, or it's probably something that's off.
It's right off.
I'm sorry?
More than likely, the mapping,
Okay.
when it transposes onto that, sometimes it gets off.
Yeah.
That's more than likely the case.
Okay.
this section, this is what our Chairman Newman was talking about here, this, the south piece of south. So, what would your pleasure be, board?
At this point, you're still an open meeting for the annexation question. Probably if the board's ready to act, it's time to close the public hearing and then see.
Oh, that's right, we didn't close the public hearing,
Can
yet,
I
have we?
just add a few comments that we've gotten on YouTube Live? That there are two people, one is just a username, so I'm not sure who it is, but, is encouraging the board to annex and zone to SR2. Matt Turner also encourages annexation and then zoning to SR2. So, there's also some concerns about road widening.
Very good. I entertain a motion that we go out, close the public hearing.
I'll move we close the public hearing.
We good? Any discussion on that? If not, Alderman Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Now then, board, what's your pleasure? Or you can still ask questions too if you want to. No, you can't?
You're, at this point, you've got to entertain a motion. And if it stumbles around, you can go back to your.
Very good.
I think Jessica asked me to make one more comment.
I think the town attorney's saying that we need to get a motion on the floor. Or continue if you're not ready to make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to continue this to our next
Very good.
next public meeting.
Motion's made. Is there any discussion on that?
Yeah, I think that the overwhelming sentiment from the community is against this development. But, what will happen if we don't annex is unclear. So, I second, or, no, I
We
don't
don't
need to.
need a
but
second. Thank you.
I agree with Ryan.
Speaking in favor of it, that's great. Any other comments or questions? All right, Alderman Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Very good. That would pass, and Mr. Sneed, do we need to even open the next public
You don't
hearing?
necessarily have to open it, but you gotta call up the topic and get the motion to continue that also.
Very good. Well, before us, board, is another public hearing for the rezoning of this property that's the subject of voluntary annexation. And so I'd entertain a motion that
So-
we continue that public hearing.
So moved.
Very good. Got a motion. Any discussion or questions on that? Mr. Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Very good. So we are at item C, item 9C. That's a public hearing to close a portion of unopened platted right-of-way parallel between West College Street and Goldmont Street. Ms. Trotman.
Will you make the correction on the cover sheet, please?
Yes. I want to note that there is an error on the cover sheet. The planning board actually voted not to recommend, not to
Right.
recommend.
Right.
And I will explain.
Thanks. That was my understanding. I missed that on your cover sheet.
You have updated cover sheets now.
Oh,
The
good.
original ones.
Now we all can be.
That's all right. There you go. We're all on the same page. Go right ahead.
David and Emily Carmona and Michael and Gretchen Glass have filed a petition to close a portion of right-of-way between West College and Goldmont Street. The properties abut the right-of-way are 218 West College and 74 Goldmont Street. The requested closure is approximately 50 feet in length and 15 feet wide. The right-of-way is not identified in any adopted plans, nor is it part of a proposed greenway or roadway system. The right-of-way is not part of any stormwater existing system or proposed to be any sort of particular drainage area. And the planning board voted not to recommend this application. The planning board wanted to hear from Public Works about potential improvements in the future to the length of the area. And depending on what information they heard, they may consider actually closing the length of the right-of-way as opposed to one little piece, which is generally their preference. So you may see this again
Right.
in a different form.
But just to clarify, the planning board, it's the more motivation for not approving was that it was not closing the entire street. It was just a part of it.
Yes, it's a tricky thing. The applicant cannot request more than what they abut, but we don't like to close bits and pieces.
Right.
So the planning board is not 100% sure they want to do that. They would, they need to have, Public Works Director Jamie Matthews is going to join our next meeting. And so they will make a decision about their next steps from there.
Okay.
Let me clarify a statement that Jessica's made. It's partly law and partly tradition. This board, several iterations back, stopped entertaining petitions to close streets and alleys unless all of the affected parties signed the petition. And that's just been the practice. In the reality, these people could have petitioned to close the entire alley, but everybody on there would have received notice of this here.
Right.
And this board, one of your predecessor boards, did, it just became policy basically. Don't entertain it unless everybody affected has signed a petition. That's where you started getting these pieces. And in the last year, of course, the planning board has taken a more active role going, let's let the town, of course, notices have to be sent. But when you get one like this and you don't get more petitioners, the town could, on its own motion, set up to close it and just give notice to all the adjoining property owners.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jessica or for Mr. Sneed?
I need to read some public comments at some point for this one.
Again, it doesn't require a public hearing, it's just a matter of hearing. So if you've got
It doesn't.
comments, then he's.
Okay. So I
How many do you have?
just have two.
Why don't you go ahead? That's fine.
All right, let's see. Highly unlikely White Mountain News is an effective media source for official notices. Even we canceled home delivery after years of subscribing due to ongoing poor content, unreliable delivery service, elimination of local employees in office, and poor responses from ACT to problems. Resolution to, I repeat, I have no objection to the closing the unopened alleyway. In fact, I support it. Also, I believe the town should be proactive and close it all the way south to US 70. Over the decades of abandonment by former deceased owners, mature trees have grown, fences and buildings have been erected by multiple encroachments. To my knowledge, there have been no complaints or enforcement to remove encroachments and land used by the abutters. The right-of-way should be closed and proportioned equally according to the property lines to the abutters, added to the tax rolls, and eventually their respective plat of survey. Thank you, James A. Full, Courtney C. Halcomb. And then the last comment is from Chris Maloney at 62 Goldmont Street, and he just says that he supports the resolution.
Okay, board, any comments or questions? And if anyone wants to make a motion, feel free to do that.
So did I understand correctly that you'd rather turn down this motion and come back later with another?
If that is what planning board chooses to do, or if this board so directed them to do, yes.
And I think, for me, very important comments were made by the town attorney that, it's practice that, you can set what rules you want to, but I think that's a pretty healthy practice that when you're going to close an unopened street that you want, needs to, you want to ask, everybody who's involved if they're on board. I mean, it's not a requirement, but it's been a practice, and I think a wise one.
Well, then I would move to vote against this closing of this section of that roadway.
Very good. So the motion is not to approve. Our motion is to open, forgive me,
Not to close.
yeah, motion.
Be careful, don't have yourself building a road all of a sudden.
That's right. The motion is not to approve Resolution R 2010. Is that correct?
Correct.
Not to approve Resolution R 2010. Is that clear for everybody? Mr. Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
So, our last public hearing for text amendments to Village of Cheshire Master Plan.
And this will be a motion to open the public hearing.
Yep.
And I assume Jessica's got the initial introduction on this one, unless she's pointing at me.
Entertain a motion to approve the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. This is a text amendment to the Cheshire Master Plan. Cheshire is a unique zoning district. It operates, its zoning conditions are articulated in the master plan as opposed to your typical ordinance that you're used to working with, since it has its own standalone document that we reference. And in this amendment, it will allow for lot sizes to be as small as 28 by 50 with setbacks of a 12 setback of 12 to 18 feet, a side setback of 6 feet, and a rear of 3. The purpose of this amendment is to give Mr. Reagan the ability to create 8 new lots on the Jacobs Cottage side with a 1,400 square foot minimum lot size, basically taking 6 approved lots and creating 8 lots to go with a product he is interested in adding to that area. And I'll emphasize, these are smaller lots, but it is unique to this section and only that district. And it is not a map amendment, it is only a text amendment.
If it's any help to this board, when the present plan for Jacobs Cottages was approved, there was a document that would have created these lot sizes but didn't get in the packet, so did not get adopted. From the developer's point of view, he's correcting an error from his last approach of application. They don't see this as something new.
No, they made their application expecting this to be there, and this is a bit of a catch-up, and it was supported by planning board.
Public comments?
No, sir.
Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I think, Jesse Gardner might have something to add. Yeah, just have 1 second. Sorry, just 1 moment.
Jesse knows we're not on
change the agenda item now, doesn't it?
Okay, nothing to add at this time, being here for questions.
No, okay. So, motion, did we haven't closed the public hearing, have we?
No.
Yeah, so motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
All right. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to adopt ordinance 020-19 as presented.
Thank you. And if there's any other questions or comments, we will vote. Mr. Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Great, thank you. Communication from staff, Mr. Sneak?
I don't have anything new. One comment, I guess, going on with Josh. The town, I'm running a few weeks behind, as the town is acquiring a very small easement on the edge of Montreat for one of the antenna to operate the telemetry for the water meters. And Josh had asked if I could have that ready for the night. I told him I could before I realized that the president of MRA is on vacation. And the mountain retreat, town of Mountain Retreat meets next week to approve it. So in 2 weeks, you should have that.
Great, thank you. Josh, do you have
Yeah, just
anything for us?
A few things here. I'll try to be quick. We are working with, I think it's Health Ridge Pharmacy. They did reach out to us. They're the only person that's reached out to us that I know of, and they'd like to potentially use Lakeview to distribute vaccinations to people for COVID-19. And I think anything we can do to make that happen would be really good. You know, we're not having any services at Lakeview right now. The mill site, we kind of moved over to 304 Black Mountain Avenue. So.
We've got some parking there, so that's good.
Yep. Just a reminder that the town will be observing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day this coming Monday on the 18th, so the offices will be closed. Also, have been talking with with some of the downtown folks, the potential of us doing maybe some curbside pickup parking spots to maybe help with some of this pandemic. We don't have all the details on that, but I'm trying to work through some of that. Whether or not it needs to come back before you, I don't know yet. But if I can do it without coming back, we'll try to get it done quickly so that can be accessible and available for folks. Just want to make sure that we're fair as we can be to everybody and give everybody the opportunity for that. We have an old building on the fire department training ground, which some of you may not even know where that is, but if you do, you get extra credit. That's down below Craigmont Park. That old building, what we want to do is burn that building down as a training exercise, and the fire department, actually the volunteer firemen, already have something called a Connex building, which is essentially a metal, looks like a tractor and trailer bed, essentially. It's a shipping container, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And what they do with these Connex buildings is they start fires in them, and they go in and put them out, and they train. So that building that's there now is in such disrepair, that we wouldn't want to put any firemen inside that building to do any kind of training. So I'm just wanting to kind of give you a heads up that that's what we want to do moving forward. It's not going to cost us anything. We want to burn that building down and then put a Connex building down in that property. If there's issues with that, then we don't have to do it. But I just want to kind of let y'all know what we're thinking.
Anybody object to that?
I know there's a creek right there. Is there any danger? Okay.
That creek's pretty good bit away from that building.
Sounds like a fitting demise for that building, doesn't it?
Let's see. The last thing, I was approached by, and I know some of you, if not all of you, are aware of Faunaflora, Friends of the Faunaflora State Trail. Bob Hunter's done a great job of getting this thing moving. They are in the process. Actually, tonight I think they met with Marion City Council and maybe McDowell County Commissioners. They are trying to get some funding to hire a full-time person to run this Friends organization to try to get trail and grants and trail on the ground. They had a cost share and broke it down for every municipality that was going to be on the trail. Buncombe and Asheville chose not to participate at this time. Black Mountain's cost share would be $5,000 for this. I was going to bring a budget amendment to you. I didn't want to bring a budget amendment for $5,000, and we have some extra money in our budget in contingency. If it's okay with you, I'd like to go ahead and give those folks $5,000 to get that person started on this trail system.
If the board doesn't mind, I'd entertain the motion that we do that.
I am gonna make the motion, but I just wanted to say how supportive I am. I think it's an excellent investment, actually, for our community. I had a long training session with Mr. Hunter, Judge Hunter, the other day, and came to understand a lot more about the project and how it could positively impact Black Mountain.
Sure,
Economically and otherwise, so I'll move that we allocate the $5,000 for the Friends of the Fonta Flora.
That sounds great, sounds good. If there are no other questions, Mr. Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you very much.
And that's
Anything
it for
else,
me,
Josh?
Mr. Mayor.
Anything from any of the board members? Alderman Patillo?
I have nothing today.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to echo what you said at the start of the meeting about the events of this past week. I taught civics for 25 years, and, you know, our government has a way that's run for over 240 years, and the events of that day disturbed me, as it did many Americans. And I just ask that the people of this community treat each other with respect, even though we have differing views. We treat each other with respect, and I would hope that they would pray for our nation.
Amen.
Amen.
I'd just like to say that I know people are getting tired of COVID and the fatigue that is really setting in for a lot of people, and with the vaccine on the horizon, it's easy to lose sight of the surge that we're experiencing right now. And I know that as a board tonight, we decided not to vote the greater restrictions on restaurants. But I would strongly encourage everyone to remain diligent, get takeout, eat outside if you're supporting the restaurant as much as you can, and just be careful with your community members, because we are experiencing a surge right now, and we need to be mindful of that.
Good, thank you. Anything, Pam? Anything, Ryan?
I would just remind the community that we have a special call meeting on Thursday. It's at 8:30, is that right, sir?
Yes.
At 8:30, so on appointment process and possible charter amendments. So please send your comments and please participate if you can.
Very good, I have no comments, and so if no one else does, a meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks, Frank.